When Father Stu hit theaters earlier this year in April, it became a box office hit, grossing more than $20 million against a $4 million budget. However, there always seemed to be one constant complaint: the salty language. Now, over 6 months later, Mark Wahlberg is releasing a brand new cut of the film in theaters nationwide. I sat down with him recently in Atlanta on the set of his upcoming film to talk about Father Stu Reborn. Here's my exclusive interview with Academy Award nominated Mark Wahlberg. All right, Mark. Father Stu is reborn at Christmas. How is he being reborn?
With a very clean, edited version, PG-13. We have removed all of the cuss words. I think every single cuss word has been removed and finally approved by the Archbishop and the other powers.
Now, as I recall, when the Archbishop first saw this film, which Archbishop was it?
Archbishop Thomas, who actually ordained Father Stu.
Okay. And he was a little concerned about the language, and you said, we're going to leave it in. Why?
Well, he was more than a little concerned, because he also knew who Stu was and what a colorful vocabulary he had. But we wanted to remain true to who he was and to show that authenticity and that grit that Stu, I think, made him more relatable to most of his parishioners and people that, you know, that he helped and that he worked with. So I think, but I did understand where he was coming from. So we actually showed the bishop the movie. He had cried. He watched it with a number of other priests and another bishop-elect, and then he literally, after 10 minutes of crying, he wrote me this wonderful letter, a glowing endorsement of the movie. But you could tell that he still was not really okay with the language. So I do give him sole credit for demanding that we do a PG-13 version of the movie, but the audience wanted to see it too. I think when families went to see the movie, or parents, you know, I think they were a little frustrated because they didn't want to expose their kids to that sort of language. But I think it reminds me very much of the first movie and theatrical experience that I had with my dad. I went to see a movie called Hard Times. It was starred Charles Bronson and James Coburn, and
I remember that
directed
movie.
by Walter Hill. It was very inappropriate for a 7-year-old at the time, but it stuck with me forever. So I think, and there's no bad language in that movie.
Really?
There's a bare knuckle fighting and stuff like that. It's an edgy film,
violent,
but you know, to see that movie and then to have had that stick with me for as long as it did, I think if we can get young people to see the movie, the PG-13 version, I think the curiosity will peak enough that they'll want to then see the original later on when they are of the proper age.
Okay, when the Father Stu DVD came out, the marketers at Sony sent this curse jar out.
No, they did.
Yes, they did. So I want you to hold this, and I want to ask a question of you. If it's $1 per profanity that you removed from the movie, how much would Mark Wahlberg have to put in that in Raymond's curse jar? Because I'm taking it back home.
There was well over 75 F-bombs alone. So
not all of them in the script. A certain director has told me.
Yeah, I mean, like, we did do a lot of improv in the film, but again, I think, you know, Stu was a very kind of colorful guy. We wanted to show all the good, you know, the pros and the cons and all the things that it took him to experience in his life to actually help him to find his calling. Okay.
Rosalind told me that there might have been 150 profanities removed. Not that she was counting or anything.
I think that is correct.
2 weeks of editing.
Yes.
Is there like 20 minutes gone from the movie?
No.
How does it play?
You'd be surprised. It plays just as good.
Really?
It really does. And you know, it's one of those things where nobody could have convinced me to take it out originally. I just felt like, you know, we would be compromising. And, you know, you had so many faith-based movies that were preaching to the choir but not really converting anybody else who was either a lapsed Catholic or somebody who was on the fence or somebody who was very standoffish.
Right.
You know.
It didn't have that saccharine flavor that you get from a lot of these faith-based movies. And it was funny. Let's face it, the movie is really funny and it plays well, I think, for younger audiences.
It's also touched so many people. I've never had a film or reaction to a film in the way that I have with Father Stu. I mean, the letters that I've gotten from people, the profound impact that the film has had on so many people, it really is mind-boggling. And to see how it's, you know, audiences have discovered it in their own way, whether it be through Netflix or, you know, video on demand. I mean, it's really continued to build. And so, I think.
But I mean, to get Sony to re-release a movie the same year it was released, that's a pretty incredible thing.
Yes.
Why did they decide to do that? Why did you want to have it re-released?
Well, I think they also saw a unique opportunity to touch a much broader audience and to touch a younger audience, which we really feel like is important. And I know that the Archdiocese, they really wanted the students to be able to go and see the movie, and they wanted to encourage them, but you know, they weren't able to fully commit to that
because of the language.
Yes,
yeah.
You know something, Father? There's a sign on the wall in my gym back home. Hope is not a tactic. I took that one to heart. Fought for everything I earned. This ain't no different. I think I know what God's doing here. Seeing how I respond, I don't get my way. But I ain't giving up. Not on him or me. I want you to reconsider your rejection.
You are a pugilist with a criminal record.
You want to look at St. Matthew? St. Augustine, St. Francis. I mean, some of the most remarkable figures in the history of the church are reformed men.
Yes, but I think what the church needs now, more than ever, is to elevate the standard for a priest.
No, what the church needs is somebody who's going to fight for God. That's me.
You said that this is the most important film of your career. Why? Do you still feel that way?
Oh, absolutely, by far. I mean, that's why I was willing to just cut a check to get the movie made. You know, it's not an easy pitch.
No.
You go in there and say, you know, a guy who was a fighter and a hellraiser becomes a priest who touches many, many people while dying of a rare muscular degenerative disease. It's not an easy sell.
No, it's not. But
No.
but it played beautifully, and it's a complex tale that
Yes.
you all pulled off in an incredible way. I have to share this with you. There's this really incredible scene in the movie, and I just watched it again with my family, where Father Stu literally crawls to the altar, and he's in such pain. He's crying out to God because he's finally reached his goal, and this disease is taking him. I know your mother, Alma, had just died when you were shooting that. How much of that is Father Stu, and how much of that is Mark?
Well, you know, I don't have any other thing other than my real life experience to draw on when I'm playing a character, you know, and I try to play characters that I can identify with and relate to in some sort of very authentic way. So yeah, you can't help but all of the things that I tap into are, you know, real things that I've experienced along the way. So having that being so fresh, it was just, yeah, you couldn't help but, you know, thinking about that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think, again, most of the time because of the suffering that she went through, I felt a lot more joy every time I thought about my mom because of all the wonderful things that she did and all the amazing things that she did to touch people in her own life and her own experience.
Yeah. And you continue her legacy, really. And this project, the timing of this project with her passing, I thought was, there's something there. There's something there.
It definitely put things in perspective for me to see her suffering that way with such grace too and dignity at the same time.
When you approach either Father Stu or the role you're playing now, do you use your personal life, or do you use an imaginative preparation? How do you approach it as an actor?
No, I always do. I think that's the one good thing that I've been able to take from all of my real life experience and apply that to my work. You know, a lot of people have kind of, you know, learned different techniques and studied and, you know, have different tricks of the trade that allow them to get to a place emotionally. And I've experienced a lot of that in real life. So it's pretty easy to draw on. But yeah, I can't help but doing that. I always try to find something that's a personal connection for me in the part to then be able to hopefully do a much more authentic portrayal of the character.
Tell me about the importance of this movie coming out again at Christmas time. Now, you released it last time during the Easter season. What is it, the importance of having Father Stu reemerge, if you will, at Christmas time, and a time when families come together?
Well, no more important time than the holidays, you know. And I think people, again, they really need to be reminded of what's important in life, you know, having their faith and, you know, celebrating that faith in their family and connecting and really understanding, you know, everything happens for a reason, and hopefully understanding God's bigger picture. And, you know, how even with this movie, like, we obviously wanted it to find as big an audience as possible right away, because that's kind of like the path that most movies take to success, right, in the industry. This movie has taken its own path, and people continue to discover it, and it continues to grow and grow. That's why, you know, the studio wanted to release it. They felt like there was definitely something happen when a movie performs on video on demand or on Netflix. after that, like a blockbuster, you know, then obviously they really feel like, you know, there's something there that audiences want to see and will gravitate towards. You just got to figure out in these unprecedented times with COVID and everything else, and people not going to see dramas, how to, you know, find an audience that will discover the film.
Well, I love that you and the studio are responsive to the audience, which is an odd thing. Usually, an audience is force-fed what the studios want, and that's the end of the story. Here, you not only adapted the story to welcome a bigger audience, but you're responding to an obvious audience need. That's a rare and good thing, I think.
Yeah, and it's amazing that the studio is willing to recognize that and be as supportive as they have, and you know, give it another opportunity at the box.
At the center of this story is really an accident that happens to Father Stu. It's his wake-up call. Have you ever had a moment like that in your life?
I've had a few. I've had a few in my younger life, you know, kind of me being, you know, wrapped up in my own world, doing my own thing. So as an adolescent, and then of course as a parent, and I'm continuing to have those moments over and over and over again.
Yeah, you relive them.
But I think that the big moment, the most recent big moment is like, you know what, it is what it is. Certain things are just out of my control. Let me focus on the things that I can, and everything else I put in God's hands.
Yeah, well, I read the story recently, and this is something you told years ago, where you're at a father-daughter dance, and they are playing songs with the unedited, explicit lyrics.
Yes.
And you went to the DJ and said,
yeah,
you got to cut this off. So it's father-daughter, these 9-year-old girls.
Yeah.
So when I read that, I thought, here you come full circle, and you're doing it with the movie. Even a movie you loved, and you did tell in an honest, forthright way. But that language might have kept some young eyes away from it that might need it.
Yeah, the young guys are the most important anyway. Obviously, they're our future, so we want to be able to make sure that, you know, we introduce them to as much love of the Lord as we possibly can.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm going to leave it there and give you the last word. What do you want families to experience through this new recut of Father Stu at Christmas?
Oh, I don't think there's anything better than them experiencing it together, you know, in a theater with other families, and hopefully spreading the word and spreading the love. I think, you know, we all know that Christmas, it's a wonderful and festive time, but the real meaning behind Christmas has much more to do with our faith in the good Lord. So, you know, I think it's perfect timing. And again, God has his own plan and his own time, and you know how he's having audiences discover this film. It's been incredible to see, and the such a wide audience. That, I mean, I've gotten letters from people from all walks of life who have found the movie. I've read this amazing letter from this woman who thought she was going to see Uncharted, walked into the wrong Wahlberg movie, and was blown away. And she was, you know, a Muslim woman, and you know, she was really amazed at how similar our faith is, Judaism as well as Islam, and just amazing, extraordinary experiences.
Yeah, no, I've heard similar things because people saw the interviews we did, and they've written about personal conversions, awareness of people in their lives who were suffering that they've become attuned to in a new way. I mean, and the power of suffering, which is a hard topic to tackle in a movie that I thought you all did such a beautiful job with. That's a hard. How do you find
very difficult.
redemption
it's just
through
unfortunately,
suffering?
you know, if you're lucky enough to live a long time, it's inevitable, right? So how you deal with that, how you approach that is, you know, look, I'm 51 years old. I've got a lot of ailments. I mean, people think, you know, I work out all the time, I'm in shape, yeah, but I'm as banged up as it gets, you know. So, you know, I start looking at things very differently, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful movie. I hope people go see it.
And thank you for all the support. I appreciate it.
Oh, please, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, bro.
Father Stu Reborn, starring Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson, directed and written by Rosalind Ross, returns to theaters December 9th. Now rated PG-13. Check those local listings. It's worth your time.